Perfect timing with the music. Hey, everybody. Almost perfect timing. Hey, everybody. Junior Hockey Advisor Jeff Colson here, and this is Junior Hockey Live. Let's go to the other half of this monstrosity that we call a live stream and get Mr. Mike Bloom on there. Bloomer, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jeff.
Oh,
Just another
man.
day.
I can't get up and do it now, but I got a window with the time of day now and the longer evenings. I gotta start putting the curtain up on the window or drawing the shades. It's coming right across me here. What am I gonna do?
This is like when you're playing in those day baseball games, and as the day gets longer and the game keeps going, and all of a sudden the shadow's over the batter instead of the pitcher. It's just a little wrinkle you got to try to overcome here.
Yeah, there's a rink in. Well, there's a few rinks but there's a rink that's got a lot of glass in Oswego. It's their college rink, and one whole wall is glass on one side.
Yeah.
And there's the Great Lakes is right out there, so there's times a day when that sun's out there and it's reflecting off the water too, and you're just in there just squinting trying to figure out where the puck's at and what's going on. So, all right. Well, it reminds me of another story, but I'll digress later. So, how you doing?
I'm doing good. We had a little bit of a action-packed day with junior hockey. Today was the NA3 draft. You had an announcement of a NA3 team that is now going to be in New Hampshire to kind of partner with the NA team that's going to be in New Hampshire. I think the NCDC announced that they're going to have a program. Rock Springs, I believe it is going to move up to that NCDC West. So a lot of news today. So that's good.
A lot of news. It's a hotbed time up for hockey right now because you got the playoffs on. You know, we just got over the national championship for the college level, and wow, boom, women. Oh, and let's not forget about that gold medal for the women in the Worlds. It played against Canada. I still have one of my former players still on that team, Olympian, now world champion, gold medalist, Haley Scamara. So congratulations to her and her family. That's a big accomplishment. And geez, I had 1 year with her, and believe me, she didn't learn a thing from me. I learned a hell of a lot from her, though. 1 year with her at U14, and she skated like an NHLer at that time. Just her mindset, her preparation for games and everything. So good for her. Congratulations, and a lot of fun to see. A lot of fun to have a little bit of connection with players there. I've had it happen a couple times with men in the Olympics over the years, but that was the first one from a player that I've had on the. I've had coaches on the women's side, but never a player. So pretty cool. So all right, today, folks, if you're watching, this is Junior Hockey Live. Jeff Colson, Mike Bloom. We're going to sit here and we're going to talk junior hockey until you fall asleep. When you do that, please like and subscribe us if you can before you fall asleep. But today, we're going to look at the North American Hockey League. We're going to preview a little bit of what we're going to talk about next week with the USHL. We're probably not going to be able to get into both of them today, but we're going to talk about the North American Hockey League and preview. They just finished the season. Now we'll time to talk about all these playoff matchups that are coming up and get a little sense of what's going on and what it's going to look like and who's who and who's going to win it all. And, of course, Mr. Bloom thinks he's going to, once again, prevail with some kind of great wisdom. I would counter with there's wisdom and then there's experienced wisdom. And I'll stick with experienced wisdom over perceived wisdom any day of the week. So you can follow anybody's advice, but that's just the way I see the world. So, all right, what are we going to talk about first, Mike? Where are we going to start?
Yeah, let's start in the Central and work our way around. So in the Central Division, you have Austin facing off. Austin's the number 1 ranked team. They're going against Minot, who's the number 4 ranked team. And then, let's just go over the matchups first. You got Austin going against Minot, and then you got number 2 ranked Aberdeen going against number 3 St. Cloud. They don't have these that you're showing here on this sheet. They don't have them by their ranking. So don't worry about 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not really how it
Right.
sets up.
Right.
But the first matchup again, 1 versus 4, Austin versus Minot. If you want me to make my pick first, and then you can share yours. I'm going Austin. Obviously, they're the number one ranked team. They've done really well all year. Anytime they faced Minot throughout the year, they've pretty much had the better of them. I think Minot might have taken maybe 2 or 3 games in that series, the series is throughout the year. But a couple of players that I think would be difference makers. Obviously, Gavin Morrissey is a Detroit area kid that is playing for Austin. He's got 61 points this year. That's a pretty impressive season when you're getting up over 40 points and he's at the 61 mark. We actually talked on one of our other podcasts about this exact matchup when they were playing earlier in the season and highlighted some of the same players. But James Gofredo, he's a defenseman on that team, moves really well, makes really good plays. He's out there in all situations. You got Jack Milanowski as well that, those two just kind of control the back end. And when you've got good defensive play and you've got forwards that can get up and down the ice and produce offense, your team's going to be difficult to beat. And again, because they've played each other so much throughout the year and Austin's had the advantage, I just think it's going to continue in this series.
Well, the layman probably would take that pick and run with it. I'm going to go with the underdog on this, and the reason is I like teams that are hot. I like teams that are finishing strong. And if you look over to the far right column, right above your head, right above that ridiculous Detroit Lions hat that you have on, and you move up to the last 10 games, you'll see that the Minotauros are 7-3 in their last 10 games. Austin's 3-4. Now, granted, there's a good chance that Austin's just sliding into the playoffs. They're ready to go. Maybe playing, some players or resting some players, maybe giving some guys some time off. There's a very good chance of that. I looked at the last few game sheets to try to see if that was the case. I didn't pick out any noticeable, they sat their top 5 guys kind of thing. And every player is going to be without players from time to time because you have injuries. That's so if they're missing a guy or two, they got to learn to play with that anyway, either team. But I just like a team that comes in hot. One thing about if we look at this Minotauros roster, and I'll show you the other roster too. Once you get past Hunter Longy, which he's having a phenomenal year, 71 points. That's a good year in any league for any team. But look at the consistency there. Now,
You got
especially
to.
sorry, I do that all the time. Okay, there's Hunter up on top, and we can see he's just knocking it out of the park. But on the downside of Hunter is 22 of those points, so a third of his production is coming on the power play. If their power play is not hot, he's not going to be hot. But then I go down the list and just look from him on down, especially when we just go into the goals, if they're going to be successful and pull this off, it's going to have to come from their top 3. They don't have a lot of depth in the scoring department. You only got 6 guys in double digits. Now, I did not do this ahead of time, but I'll do it now. Let's go back up and look at your pick, which is Austin, correct?
Yep.
Oh, I got to put it into regular season play and hit submit. Sorry about that. Okay, now we just go in that goal department on Austin's team. And those double-digit scorers, man, they're 7 deep, and there's a lot of points on this team, a lot of points overall. I look at this and I go, okay, what's the difference between the two teams? What makes up the difference? And right now, it's just one team is playing really, really good and one's not. If you're going on just firepower, you've got to take, this team. You've got to take Austin. There's just no doubt about it. They've got a lot of points up there, and they've got a lot of good players. I mean, there's no doubt if you're going to pick that team on just firepower, that's the team you take. I would argue, and I'm going to see if I can pull up the report quickly for you without going too deep into this. Here's our special teams report overall. And we're going to go into the Robertson Cup. Or not the Robertson Cup. We're going to the regular season. And hit submit. So here is the power plays overall. Once again, you're taking Austin at 18-4. There's a slight edge on that power play, slight edge on it. Why not? So if they get hot, and it's a penalty-ridden game, there's a chance that this goes the opposite direction. But again, you could argue and you could counter, and I know I'm taking this right out of your mouth, so you don't get a chance to say it. But Austin's got a pretty good PK. They're
Exactly.
the second best in their division, but it's not a daunting one. 84-6 is not an 87-5 like St. Cloud. I mean, it's good, but it's not great, So that's my
Well, you
thoughts.
got that Scotty Bowman metric where if your power play percentage and your PK percentage are equaling 100 or above, you're in a good spot. And Austin's do. Minot's do not.
You're off by 1.1. Okay.
You're either there or you're not there, Jeff.
Ooh.
You know what? Looking at your little square there in the corner, this could be our most successful show because we almost can't see you at all.
That's great. That's great. I'll just leave it like that. You just gotta speak, don't you?
Yep.
Okay.
There it is. You actually look good today. I gotta admit.
That's the way we're going the rest of the show. Just like that. All right.
All right. Let's
so
move
that's
on.
my thoughts on that. I mean, look, there's going to be some good hockey coming out of that division, and that's going to be excellent to watch. I'm looking forward to watching it across the board. You're going to see good hockey. That's all there is.
Yep.
You're going to see good hockey across the board. So I hope everybody enjoys these playoffs, and especially there. All right, what are we going to do? Go to the next division?
No, we still got Aberdeen versus St. Cloud.
Yeah. Okay,
so
what's your picks on?
Aberdeen's the number. Why don't you go since I went first last time? I'll let you go first.
I like to talk about who's hot and who's playing great hockey. That's one of the biggest things going into playoffs that anybody looks at from the NHL on down. And I'm looking at this right now and saying, if you look at their past 10 games, 5-4 0-1, 4-4 1-1, not much difference there. You look at their overall season points and the number of points that they've got. Aberdeen's up by 1 point. You look at the plus minus. That's where we really see a difference on these two teams. You got one team, which is Aberdeen, that's -1, which is Austin's sitting at a plus 36, and that they're the best. Only Bismarck is the only other team that is plus in this division, which is kind of bizarre because Bismarck didn't make the playoffs. But you look at the two teams, Aberdeen's -1 and St. Cloud is a -21. I got to take Aberdeen on this. And if you throw in the coaching and the fact that you got a coach there that's been there numerous times, knows how to coach at this level, knows how to coach playoff hockey, might not be the most personable guy. You might not want to hang out with him at a wedding reception or anything, but he's still the guy that's going to win this. And I think Aberdeen does this. And I think they do it in style. I don't even think it's going to be close.
Yeah, I think when I went into it, like I think coaches matter, and Langer is, I think, the winningest current coach in the North American League. So he's been around the block, and typically I would have taken them, but he also was in a different league and came back into the league this year to coach the team partway through. So, there are guys on this roster that are not his guys. So he's basically trying to do what he can with the roster that was already there. So based on that factor, and I got some former players on the St. Cloud team, one of which is, one of my favorite players of all time, Ryan Thomas. I'm picking St. Cloud in the upset in this series. But it's a little more than that. I think some of the like the plus minus issue that you're pointing out, like that is definitely a problem when you're looking at how their team played. But they did make some moves to acquire some players that I think changed the way their team plays a little bit and has improved some of those metrics. I also think they have some younger guys on their team, in particular Andrew Clark, who's a St. Louis Blues, junior Blues kid, St. Louis area kid, who's a rookie, and he's got, I think, 46 points right now. So he's now taken a step, and instead of him really being a rookie at this point in the year, he's actually somebody that is, getting leaned on to, be somebody that can perform for that team. And they've got, Cade Peterson, 50 points. You got Blake Perbix with 49 points. So they've got some players, that can actually score and, put in the offense. So, let's see what it goes. I think it's hard to always, like I said, pick a team against a coach that's as seasoned as Langer is. But if I'm going to do it one year, this is the year.
You think? You think? I might give you that. I might give you that. Whoops, wrong side. There we go. Another stat we should look at because it kind of goes counter to my argument, but I'm sticking with my picks because of the amount of power play opportunities they get. Aberdeen's second in their division and the amount of power plays they get, which 240, St. Cloud 221. It's not that much of a difference, but Aberdeen's got to get a lot of opportunities for them to be able to put points up with a power play because they're struggling at a 15.8. I mean, that's easily one of the lowest in the league overall, not just their division, but the league. And they're not much better on the PK. So what you're saying about Langer's team is evidence right there. If he's got a seasoned team, they're much better on the power play and the penalty kill. And because he's working with players that weren't his, and he didn't bring in, I shouldn't say that because he did have some.
I'm sure he had some influence in the team, but
yeah,
there's probably some where he didn't also.
Right. So just one of those things that you got to look at across the board. Here's the number that I struggled with because even though I'm picking Aberdeen, look at that power play goals against number 44 to St. Cloud's 32. So, I just look at this shorthanded goals for, they're about the same. Those stats all lean towards St. Cloud. But I think Aberdeen is still, that coaching situation.
Yeah, you can't count them out. I know.
Yeah,
Believe me, I struggled with it.
So I'm sticking with my pick. We'll see how that goes, and we'll see how this runs in the long run here. So, all right, what do you got next?
Let's go to the East. The East has Maryland versus Northeast, New Jersey versus Maine.
Give me a second, and I'll pull up the standings from the season so you can get an idea of what we're talking about.
And again, Maine was number 1 going against number 4 Northeast Generals. This was a tough one also, to be honest with you.
I think Maryland sits on top of that division, correct?
Yeah, they're number 1. And I think they've pretty much been number 1 in that division throughout the whole year too.
Yeah. There we go.
For me, they're deep. They've got 6 players over 40 points, which is a lot. Some of the better teams that have high offenses, they've got 4 or 5 guys. They've got 6 that are above 40 points. And then they've got like 7, 8, 9 that are pretty close, like right there to 40. So, they can definitely put the puck in the net. So they're deep. So the depth on that team makes it very difficult for other teams to go against. And there may be some better players on other teams that are better than like the best player on Maryland, but because of that depth, I mean, it's like every time over the boards, you're seeing a quality line that's given everything they can, that they're really difficult to beat. So, I got them going, to the next round, beating Northeast. I think their goaltender, William Hankinson, is really good. I mean, he's a Swedish kid. I seen him play a couple times and just very impressed. I think he is a Lake State commit. But either way, he's a big kid. He moves well. He blocks the net. I mean, he's going to be somebody that is a difference maker in this series, just because he's tough. I mean, again, when we're looking at some of these teams that are number one in their division and they've been number one throughout the whole year, they're tried and true. They've shown it, throughout the whole course of the season, that now getting into the playoffs, they're probably re-motivated to, inflict their will again. So I just see Maryland coming out of this series, and I don't see them really having much competition in order to do it. I hate to say that because I don't want to bury Northeast, but I see a lot of good in Maryland.
How can you not see a lot of good in Maryland right now? You can look at the stats. You can look at the team. This team passes the smell test. The only thing that may get in their way a little bit is maybe they get in a situation where you just get some experience, player experience and people experience. They're just a little ahead of them going into the playoffs. Maryland does not have a long history as a program or with playoff runs. So
Right.
I would say the only thing that could get in their way is Maine is been there now. You got the returning national champion in this division too. Those teams, they don't need to have the best team if they just get ready to play playoff hockey and know how to play playoff hockey. When you've got two teams that have made it all the way to Blaine in the last 2 years in your division, well, you're always going to get one. But my point is, there's some experience there. I think that's the only way that Maryland loses this is if they just play outside of themselves, or too much assumption into their game, meaning they think that they've got it already wrapped up because they played so well. They are the hottest team in the division in the last 10 games. What I don't like about Northeast and Maine, the two teams that are at the bottom of the four teams in the top four teams, is they stumbled in. Johnstown finished with 63 points, and Maine and Northeast Generals, they're at 65 and 69. Their two records, Maine 3-7 going down the stretch, the Generals 4-6. Johnstown was 6-3, and if Johnstown had picked up another win or two, this is a different looking top four easily. And I think it's very interesting that those two teams struggled at the end when they're fighting for their lives for a playoff, not only a playoff spot, but to make the playoffs. And so that's interesting to me. They both finished with losses. Northeast finished with 2 losses in a row, and Maine lost their last one. So Maine, lose their last one, goes 3-7 in the last 10. Northeast, lose their last 2, goes 4-6. It's don't get me wrong. That last game probably didn't matter because Johnstown was already out at that point because they had lost, they had won, but it did. There was no way they could catch those points. Still, that's not the way to come into playoffs. That's not the way to come in the playoffs at all. And so my opinion on this one is it's Maryland all the way, and there's 3 other teams.
Nice. So we just skipped the other matchup.
We can go. Yeah, we can walk through it if you want. Yeah, sure. New Jersey Titans and the Maine Nordiques. Go. You go first.
Well, I'm actually going to take the underdog. I'm going to take Maine over New Jersey, even though New Jersey's the defending champions. I think they had some turnover on their roster in New Jersey. They still have some of the guys that were a part of that team, and they actually have had a good season. Watching Maine and at the beginning of the year in Blaine, and then throughout this year, I really like the way they play. The way they move the puck, the structure that they play with. Is it perfect every time? No. You're obviously seeing they kind of limped into the playoffs, so that there's something to be said for that. But I just have a feeling like I just like the way that team plays. The other thing, I was looking at their stats. And if you can pull up their team, I just want to make sure that it's the same on here as it was when I was looking earlier. But I didn't see a single kid on their roster that had a minus. And any other roster, you're going to see guys that have minuses, whether they played a couple games or whatnot. I didn't see anyone on their roster that had one, which was just really bizarre to me.
Except for the guy that only got 2 games. But, yeah, you're right. They're regular
there's
players.
One there that had a minus, but there's no other player that did. And I think that goes to, show like maybe the the way they play is a little bit more defensive minded, but then they have the scoring ability to make sure that they're putting in more than they're giving up. And that's a metric. I know people in the whole analytics world are starting to get away from plus minus, but when you're not seeing that in any other team but them, there's something to that metric. And, that's why it's not why I'm going with them, but again, it kind of, rolled up into all the things I think about their program and their team for this year. I'm going with them over New Jersey in an upset.
Well, I would agree with you. That's a nice stat, but the reason why I would say that stat doesn't really mean much is go back and look at the two teams' goal differential overall. New Jersey Titans plus 45, Maine Nordiques plus 20. So they scored relatively the same amount of goals. They had 212 and 208, but the big difference is what they give up. And so, to me, what you have to do then is the deeper dive into that is looking at special teams. Is it because they all those players got ahead in their plus minus, and then they're giving up goals on the special team? So you only see the goals they score for their team, is a plus. And if your team gets scored on, and that's interesting, and we might as well look at it right now. Let's look at special teams for this and see if we've uncovered something or if it's just Jeff making up crap. One way or another, we'll see.
What it typically means is they're really good 5-on-5, and if they're giving up goals, it's on the PK and things like that.
Yeah, but if their power play is giving up all the goals, and that's where where they're weak at, so they're plus. What I'm saying is, if the other team scores on a power play, it doesn't affect you as a negative on your plus minus. So you could have your best player on the team look great, or your best 10 players on the team look great plus minus wise if they're giving up all their goals on the special team. So just looking at them real quick, Maine here, as far as their special teams, did I pull up? No, I don't have special teams.
No, you got to click on it.
Got to click on it. So their power play is clicking off at 26. Their PK, though,
that might be worse than the league compared to Danbury.
So there's why your differential looks so good, and that's a deceiving stat at times because they're
stay out of the box.
Yep,
that's
they're giving up a chunk of goals on their PK is giving up a chunk of goals. So even though they're still giving up the goals, they're just not showing up on the individual players plus minus. So that's all that is. Yep. So that's a stat you really can't rely on.
Well, you can.
Nice try.
Nice try. You can definitely rely on it. You're just pointing out why it is the way that it is, not that it's still an advantage.
It's not an advantage when your penalty kill is at 75%. There is no advantage.
Okay, but if you're playing 100% of the game 5-on-5, they have the advantage.
Okay, so what's the other thing to look at? You look at power play opportunities, 176, and they're going up against a team that's got 237. So it looks like Northeast, if they draw penalties, they draw more. So that puts them in the advantage right there. I won't want to see Maine on the power play because clipping off at 26, they've got a great power play, but boy, they just don't know how to kill. They might not even put anybody on the ice. I mean, at 75%, they might just give them shootouts, let all those four guys just go on there and bang away at the goalie. I don't know what's going on there. But anyway,
they're still above the 100% mark, baby.
Yeah, you can keep living with that 100% mark.
Scotty Bowman, the best coach of all time, they say.
Yeah, he came up. The one thing about it is, if you do enough research on Scotty Bowman, you'll realize that everything he's done the opposite of it too. When nobody else was running man on man down low, he was running man on man down low. When nobody else was running left wing lock, he was running left wing lock. But when everybody else started doing it, he moved away from it and would be the first one to bash it. So the one thing you got to be careful of anytime you quote a Scotty Bowman thing is there's usually the same quote on the other side of the argument. Not because he's political. It's just that, after, 98 years in the league or whatever he was in the league, he'd actually tried to, innovative guy though. Geez, doing things that It started back in Montreal. I mean, he was trapping before the New Jersey Devils. Everybody, credits the New Jersey Devils, which was all a bunch of Montreal Canadian guys coaching the team at the time, and Lemaire was part of the management and the coaching there. Everybody credits them in the '80s of being this shut down, lock, play D zone team, and it was because they didn't have a lot of great upside talent for scoring, and they did lock you down. They had Brodeur and net, but they got credit for this man-on-man defense down low and trapping and all this stuff. No way. You go back and you look at the '70s. That's when Scotty Bowman was doing this stuff in the Montreal. Didn't get any credit for it then until he became much more developed and respected in the league. Remember, everybody thought he was crazy at first. He had a steel plate in his head and from juniors getting cracked in the head and having surgery. Never played pro, so nobody gave him any shot of ever being a good coach. He showed them, didn't he? It also shows you that us guys that don't have much upstairs, we have the opportunity to still be good coaches. Not sure what that means.
I'm just waiting for your shining moment. That's all. Sometimes people find it earlier.
If you see this way the sunshine on my head, you can almost see the steel plates just from the glare coming off this sun glare thing. So, yeah, let's move on.
All right. So you're picking New Jersey then. That's what's coming out of this. You got Maryland and New Jersey.
I'm picking New Jersey, but it doesn't matter. I think you got a clear-cut number one in this as far as who moves on out of this division. All right, let's go. Move on.
Oh, you're rushing me? You're the one telling all the stories. We're going to the Midwest Division.
I'll be there in a second. You start off.
All right, so we got the number 1, Wisconsin versus number 4, Chippewa. Then we got number 2, Minnesota versus number 3, Kenai. So in the first matchup, Wisconsin obviously in a new home, expansion year for them. And it's not an expansion team. It's a team that relocated, but still they're in a new environment. The fans obviously really embrace them. So their games are packed and they really get a home ice advantage there. So based on that and the fact that I like 2 of their forwards a lot, Luke.
Who are we speaking of again? I was pulling that up. Which team's got
Wisconsin.
a new rink?
Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah. My nephew is there.
Not a new rink. They relocated to a new area.
Yeah, so it's my nephew's team. Yeah, I guess I got to go for them, don't I?
So
I got to see him at a family wedding when his brother gets married, and I don't want to get put in a headlock. He's bigger than me.
So are you picking them, or are you just giving a shout out?
I've got to pick him. Not happy to, because I see some holes. This is a team that's, I don't see the depth the same way other people see this team. I see Wisconsin as a team that was put together with some pretty solid players, decent coaching. I have nothing against any of that, but I just don't think that in 1 year you can put a team together that can make the run all the way to the finals. That's just my opinion.
Well, they didn't put the team together. It still was the Magicians that just moved over. So
yeah, but that team was reworked. That team was reworked quite a bit, and so I'm looking at this team and saying, remember, this is the team that had a problem with no, I'm mistaken on that. That's not that. Which team had the coach that was suspended from hockey coming into this season? Maybe it was Wisconsin.
I don't know.
Who's the new ownership that came in from Los Angeles into the NAHL this last year? It's not in the South. Yeah, I think it. Now I'm confused on which. I think it was Chippewa Steel. I'm sorry. New ownership was in Chippewa, but Wisconsin still retooled. I don't know. I just don't feel as good about them. And it's going against this is intuition going against the reality. They are the hottest team in that division. They're the strongest team as far as points go. The goals differentials in their favor. Goals against is low. You'd seem like you'd want to pick them, but I don't. I don't. My overall pick coming out of this is going to be the Wilderness. I like them. They're almost as hot as a team. They're almost as good points wise. Their goal differential is actually one better. And so, I know we've got to go through the matchups. Wisconsin will beat Chippewa. I don't doubt that. I think the Wilderness will beat the Bears coming out of Alaska, and I don't see that going any other way. Just on goal differential, Kenai is in third place, and they're the only team in the top four with a minus 15 to everybody else. There's a 30 goal differential, and there's an 78 goal differential between them and the top team. And between them and the Wilderness, there's a 37 goal differential. That's hard to overcome. That's really hard to overcome. So, I'm looking at this as, a situation where, Minnesota Wilderness walk out of this division.
Wow. I like the way you just threw everything all together in your predictions. So we went through just a high of a matchup into who's coming out of the division.
Well, why not? Why not? I don't want to spend 3 hours doing this preview show. We're already 37 minutes in, 38 minutes in. Figure we'd speed it up a little bit.
Yeah, mine as well. It won't distort it at all. All right. Well, I guess
we can break it down slower, but that just takes minutes. I just thought I'd throw it at you and let you know who's coming out of that division. Did it the last two? I did this the last division too.
We didn't do that for any of the other divisions.
Yeah,
so
I did. I did it. I just did it when we talked about Maryland.
Well, that's the first one you picked to do it in. We didn't do that for the Central. So anyway,
let's get back on track. Aberdeen. There you go.
Yeah, we might as well. We might as well just say who's winning it all, and then take a couple weeks off and not have a podcast.
That's going to be tough because we got to talk about the South now, and this is the tough one. Go ahead.
You got Oklahoma versus Amarillo.
Oklahoma. Woo. That's a tough team, man.
Topping the charts. They've been good all year. And then you got Lone Star versus Shreveport. Obviously,
does it get better than that? Let's talk about Oklahoma and Amarillo first so we can spend some time. First of all, shout out to a couple of things. First, before we get into those top four, New Mexico. Holy smokes! I wasn't expecting that. The two teams in front of them go 8-2 and 9-1 to finish the year. New Mexico goes 4-5. New Mexico was a month ago was a lock to be in the playoffs. It looked like they were going to fight for the top. They were in a really good spot. And just didn't have the ending that I expected. Would have never picked them as being the fifth place team in this division. So really, really, it's got to be a frustrating and upsetting year for them after, making it all the way to the Final Four last year.
Right.
That's got to be a real kick in the pants for them. Good program, good coaching, good ownership. Sad to see, but that's hockey. The other team that made a run and made a year out of it is Odessa. Odessa's been really, really weak for the last few years, and they had a run. They had a run. They had a shot at this. Ended up 6-4, but you got to look at who they were playing. They were playing some tough teams there at the end. They were playing the top of the league there at the end. But compared to where they were, if you remember, Odessa was light years away from even being a playoff contender. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months into the year, and really found a way to start fighting back and winning some important games. So, it didn't quite get there for them, but boy, oh boy, it's nice to see them, 7 points, 8 points out of making it into the playoffs, but still they're in that last month with hope. I mean, the hope didn't end until, a few games before the end of the year. So that's got to be a good feeling for them. I congratulate both those teams for, more so to Odessa. I kind of feel bad for New Mexico, but Odessa put something together that was pretty cool this year.
Yeah, and I think Odessa really turned the tide last year. Just watching them play, I always walked away, anytime our team was playing them or I was just watching them, I'm like, oh my God, are they fast? Not only do they skate fast, but they move the puck, which makes them faster. And, they were fun to watch. And last year they just kind of fell short. This year, again, they they were in the thick of it for almost the whole season, right up to the end there. So, credit to, Coach Dewar over there. He's getting that program into a, playoff, contending type spot. So that's pretty impressive.
All right. Thoughts. First one. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the easy one. Oklahoma Amarillo.
Yeah, I mean Amarillo's on quite the heater, leading into the playoffs. So it's almost like if they can keep that going, maybe they can knock off Oklahoma. But Oklahoma has been so good this whole season that I just can't pick them to lose, especially in the first round. So I think they're gonna, step back up, get back into playoff mode again. Some of these teams that have been good for this long throughout the whole season, it's just natural to take your foot off the gas a little bit because they could, and the Brahmas or Shreveport or anybody's not going to catch them. So their natural instinct is to take your foot off the gas a little bit. So I think they'll step it back up and be able to take care of business and move on.
Agree. Oklahoma is strong. They're deep. They play well. They play well on the road. That's something we haven't really talked about much. That becomes a big part of the, playoff run is being able to play on the road. But Amarillo, as much as they made a good run, they made it into the playoffs. They did a lot of things right. They are the hottest team, and I love going with that hot team. 9-1 going in there, but boy, oh boy, unless Oklahoma's hiding something. The Wheels really got hiding injuries. Maybe something is there that caused that. I don't think that them 4-5-1 at the end is much of a deal. I don't think that would be 4-5-1 if Lone Star was within 2 or 3 points of them. I think that 4-5-1 would have been 7-3 or 8-2. Just watching how they ended and who they were playing. So
yeah,
go ahead.
Just to jump in, Oklahoma, I talked about Maryland and just, the fact that they had 6 players on their team that had 40 plus points. Oklahoma had 9, and that was far and away the most on that team or in the league on their team. So they have the depth. They play a style where they've got a lot of offense. They can move up and down the ice. They defend well at the same time. When you look at goals for, goals against, they're at the highest end of the goals for, and they're at one of the lower ends of the goals against. The one thing, though, that could be the difference for them, and we've talked about it in the past, is they had a stud in net in Corpy who moved up and is now with Tri-City in the USHL. Yep. They have still kind of stabilized their goaltending position with Duras. He's been great. But he's not Corpy, and there is a little bit of a difference there between the two goalies. So that could be an issue. I don't think it will be, but if there is an upset in that series, I don't want to put it on one person, but that could be a difference.
Okay, we're both set on Oklahoma moving on out of that series. Now, we left this for the last, but this could be the best rivalry in junior hockey right now, bar none. Bar none. In the United States, I know of no other rivalry like the Lone Star Shreveport rivalry. This, for those that don't know, you got on one side, you've got Dan Wildfung. He's a Lone Star coach, but played his pro hockey in Shreveport. Played for the general manager of Shreveport, the junior general manager. He was the pro coach at the time. Long history with those two guys. He played with the head coach, Soupy, Coach Campbell. Most people don't know the full history here. You can watch the Dan Wildfung video we've got on Junior Hockey Advisor that explains a little bit about this rivalry, but you don't have two programs out there that know each other better than these two. That it's a rivalry playoff style game every game from the first game of the year to the last game of the year. They both play well on the road against each other. You're not going to see, because you're playing with a rowdy, out of control crowd in either spot. The other team still shows up. They still produce. They're used to it. So these two teams now, Shreveport has an edge on some things. Right now, they have the last national championship, Robertson Cup, coming out of the South under their belt from a couple seasons ago. They still have residual players, 2 or 3, I think, that are left on the roster from that team. So you got guys in the locker room that remember what it took, guys that have actually got that championship ring to walk in and show the other guys on the team, here's what the ring looks like. Here's what it's going to take. That's their leaders. That's their core leaders right now. So there's a big, big advantage with that. Now, with that said, Shreveport's very similar to to Odessa. Shreveport was down in the rankings at the beginning of the year, chiseled away. Nobody knew if they were going to be a playoff team at midpoint of the season. You thought, this is a bad year for Shreveport. Now you look at them, they arguably in the second half of the year were a top 2 team in this division. They played extremely well in the second half of the year. They finished the year 8-2 to Lone Star 6-3. Boy, oh boy, I got to pick them on this. I know where my heart is. My heart says I want Lone Star to win this. I see a lot of good things. I still think Lone Star has the edge with coaching. I think Lone Star's got the edge in net, but I'm looking at a team that's very hot, that's very competitive, and it's got a few of those national championship rings in the locker room. This is going to be a great series.
Yeah. I think you throw the records out, you throw anything that happened throughout the year, anytime these teams play each other. So, when we look at all the stat lines like we do for a lot of the other matchups, like it doesn't apply to this matchup because everybody's going to be ready for each other. They've probably been looking forward to it for a while because for the most part, over the last few weeks to months even, it looked like these two teams, no matter what happened, there was possible Shreveport jumped Lone Star, but both teams are going to be 2-3 in the matchup in some way, some form. So
82
everyone's
to 83 points. The points are close. They both have 37 wins on the year. Here's 2 stats though, and this is going to be the difference maker. One is clamp down, shut down, playoff style defense all year long for Lone Star. Lone Star plays their first game in the D zone just like they want to win a championship game in the D zone. It's just relentless. It's grinding, and it's rock solid. There's a lot to say about how they play defense. Now, as great as their defense is, goals for one of the weaker teams in the league, overall league, as far as goals production goes. So if there's an Achilles heel, if they're not getting a team production, and that's where they get their points. They get their points. It could be from the third line. It could be from the first line. Every game, they're producing as a unit a lot of points. They don't have a lot of big points on this team. Shreveport has a little bit more on the front end as far as points, and their defense isn't that far off on the back end. I give the defense to Lone Star. I think that's the best defense in the league, bar none. I give the offense. I don't think they're the best in the league, but I give their offensive edge to Shreveport. Who wins here? Who wins? This is going to be a great series to watch to see, which side comes out of this, the defense or the offense.
I'm riding with our guys. I'm going Lone Star, baby.
I am going to say this. My heart wants Lone Star to win, and I call this a toss-up. And I call it a toss-up because I want to see this go to – as a fan, I want to see all the games played out. I don't want this to be a 3-0 Lone Star win. As a person on the staff, I want it to be a 3-0 win over Shreveport and just go in with a lot of momentum to that next round. So, it's the fan hat or is it the coaching hat? On this show, I got to speak as a pragmatic fan and with a little expertise on this. I can't be a homer completely. But no, there's no doubt about it. This is going to be it. Slight edge, I don't know. I think there might be a larger edge on the coaching just because he's been around a lot longer than Soupy has, and that's Dan. Soupy came in a little bit late. I think this is only his 3rd year as a head coach. So Dan still got the strings, but Soupy's got a guy as a GM that will come down to that locker room all the way through the playoffs, bolstering that coaching staff. So this will be interesting.
Well, I think there's a stat too that they used to throw around the NHL and things like that, where the first team to score 3 goals typically wins 77% of the time. So if these series is, the games I should say in this series are getting up to 3, 4, 5 goals, that's not good for Lone Star. We gotta, they gotta keep it 2-1, 2-0, 3-2. Like if there's high powered offenses, they're not built that way right now. Some of their players are a little bit younger, and they're still learning how to score at that high of a clip to keep up. So it's always defensive, but this year it's even more important. And luckily they have two Division 1 committed goalies that help with the whole defense and that whole mindset. So we can't get they can't get into a track meet. You know what I mean? They can't be goal for goal, goal for goal. It's got to be low scoring for them to come out of this series.
And as close as I've said the games have been with these teams can play on the road, you gotta like Lone Star because their first two are at home. Knock off those wins at home if you can get them, and then the final game of the series, if it goes all the way, it goes 5 games, is at home again. So um, that's a nice edge to have. Junie jumps up and says right off the bat, as soon as I make a prediction, he thinks that the Mudbugs are going to take the series. It's there's no argument that this is going to be a great. I'm hoping it's a great series. Now I won't complain if Lone Star goes, 3-1, 3-1, and 3-1 and wins all three first games, and we call it a day. But I just think that this is going to be a fun series.
Yeah,
If
I
you're
think when you look at all the different games that are being played, there's certain games, even for me, like working within the league, there are certain games that I want to watch. And obviously, even if I wasn't a part of Lone Star, that would be a game I'd always be watching. I think you're going to say something. Go ahead.
I was going to say this is if you don't know the NAHL and you don't know the league and you want go to get your hockey TV subscription out and circle those dates, the 21st, the 22nd, the 28th, the 29th, and May 1st. If you haven't watched the game, and it's deceiving when you watch the NITEC Center for Lone Star, you do see a crowd behind them. But remember, that side of the crowd you're seeing is 1/3 of the size that's in your back, where the camera's from, because that's the big side of the big wall with the big stands. So it's a great crowd there. It's a fantastic crowd. And when you see the games that are played in the Georges Pond for Shreveport, they play in a big, bowl stadium, and it's going to be cranking. It won't fill because it's, that was a pro stadium, and it's hard to fill it at the NAHL level, but it's going to be a great crowd. There'll be a few thousand people there, minimum, and both are entertaining places to play. Both are great places to have rivalry, and this is going to be the series to watch. I'm going to be very,
Yeah.
very, very, very happy. Popcorn, buttered popcorn, feet up, and normally I don't watch a whole hockey game all the way through. I'm watching a period here. I'm going to watch a period there. This one, 3 periods plus maybe some overtime too.
Well, that's what I was going to say, that there's certain matchups that I'll follow, meaning like I'll check the scores and I'll be looking at it on my phone. But then there's certain matchups, and that's one of them where I'm tuning in, to make sure that I'm watching that series. And there's, I think Austin and Minot, that's another one that I'll probably tune into and watch. I honestly think the Wisconsin Chippewa series is going to be another one that I'm just curious to see how it goes, so I'll probably tune into it. But again, there's certain ones, and I think as these divisions start getting a little bit tighter with the teams that are moving on, then you really start getting into like these are must see games where you want to watch the whole thing, because not only are the players now getting more best on best, but just the way those teams play. It's just exciting. So, especially for people who aren't really familiar with the North American League, this is now the time to watch. And I think the kids that think like I'm going to play in the USHL, and then they realize they're not quite there, and it's like, oh, okay, well, what North American League team should I look to play on? Like, I don't really know much about the league. They should be watching these games because, I mean, it is really good hockey.
Yeah. So let's do overall predictions. Then we got a question or two to answer that have been coming in. Let's just pick division because that'll give us something to talk about later on. Pick the
Okay.
division the champion's coming out of.
Ooh.
Come on,
Wow.
Elmer. Looks like you're just freaking looking at those brake pads on that 64 Chevy and pulling the hat off. Woo!
Here's the thing. Oklahoma has by far and away been the best team. But the South Division, once you finally get out of that division, sometimes you're so beat up that there's not much left in the tank. So, and I think if it gets to that point and it's Shreveport versus Oklahoma, it's Lone Star versus Oklahoma, they are going to get a piece of each other no matter what. So, it's not easy to come out of that division. And when you do, sometimes, like I said, there's not much left to go. So I'm actually going to pick the Midwest, and I'm going to pick Wisconsin as being the team as an underdog that's going to go in and win.
I'm still picking the South, and I'm picking it for the same reasons. But what I'm hoping for is that a team comes out of the South unscathed. So if a team gets lucky and stays out of overtimes, wins one of their series, 3 games, boom, gets it over with. I don't think I can pick. I think the top 3 are toss-ups in my mind, but I'm picking the South, and I'm saying if one of those 3 teams, if Lone Star, Shreveport, or Oklahoma can get out of 1, if not 2 series with 3 or 4 games and not having to take it all the way out, stay away from overtimes, I think you got your champion right there. I don't think it's close if that's the case. If those series go 5 games, if you see multiple overtime games in a series where it's just draining them down, not only physically but emotionally, the South doesn't have a chance. Then I don't know who I'd pick if it doesn't come out of the South, to be honest with you. I really don't.
I'm assuming it's a bloodbath, which is why I had to go off of that team because,
there's 3 teams there. One of them could skate through. One of them could find a path, and if they do, and they keep it down to 6 or 7 games to get out of the South, I think they've got a shot to be the overall champion. Remember, the South still has, in the last 5 or 6 years, they still have the most national champions. Shreveport's got 2. Lone Star has 1. So you've got the coaches that know what the hell they're doing down there in that division. The experience of winning the national title comes out of the South.
You pulled a dirty trick on me. You asked me who the team was that was going to win it all, and then you picked one division and gave yourself three options within that division.
I said pick the division. I go back on the tape. I said pick the division you think that's going to win it all.
That's I would have changed my pick.
And I not only said that, but I said that'll give us a chance to talk about more on future shows. So I didn't want the overall pick. I just wanted where the division was going to be. So, man, oh, man, you try to do these things professionally. You try to do it right, and then you get people that don't listen.
No, it went off the rails when you hijacked it in the second division that we started covering.
Okay. All right, we got a question coming in. Could an NA3HL team beat a bottom NAHL team? The answer is unequivocally yes, if the NAHL team decides to play in their snow boots without a goalie in the net.
I disagree in some senses.
Of course you would.
I think when you look at like this year and you say, could Granite City beat Danbury? I think they might be able to. In a normal year, when you don't have an expansion team and things like that, maybe I don't think the same. But, when you look at Granite City, who won the NA3, and you see the amount of players they have on their team that played on other NA teams,
you're talking about what you're saying, but here's where you're wrong. The question isn't could the best NA3HL team beat arguably the worst ever NA3HL or NAHL team. The question was, could a NAHL team beat could an NA3 team beat a low-end NAHL team? They didn't say the worst team. They said a low-end team. So if you just kind of average out what the low end looks like, there's still every one of those teams is still carrying D1 talent. Every one of those teams are still carrying guys that are not NA3HL players. They're a step above the NA3HL. Maybe they've got a couple guys that are crossover that could, go either way, but the majority of those rosters are, solid in all teams. I don't see it. That's like the argument you hear between D3 and ACHA D1 hockey. Same argument there in my mind. D3 teams practice 4 days, 5 days a week. ACHA teams practice twice a week, just on ice time alone. I know I'm digressing, but I don't see it. I don't see. I don't. It's not like a USHL team playing a NAHL team in the off season or in the preseason exhibition. It's not the same. Sorry, my thing's
I
going
stand
crazy.
by my point.
Can you hear me?
I can.
My Alexa's talking.
I stand by my point.
You don't have a point.
You
don't deserve a point. If you're going to take that stance,
like it.
You're losing your credibility on the show. Let's see. The audience was at 450. We're down to 11. Okay, that's what happens when you make insane statements like that. That's insane.
Well, how can it be? You just said that you believe that Danbury this year, which is a perennial one of the worst teams that's been in the league, we can't use that as an example. Well,
I didn't say we couldn't use an example. They didn't ask you to the question wasn't posed to play the worst. It said one of the bottom teams or the bottom of the league. In fact, it was a bottom NAHL team. So if we pick just Danbury,
the
bless
bottom
their soul, they that is one of the worst teams. You probably would have a decent game. I'm still giving it to Danbury. They still get that top end of being in the NAHL, even though you're a bad team. You still have 4 or 5 players that anybody in the NAHL would take. There's still guys on that Danbury team that anybody would take. There's still guys. Granite City does not have a roster full of 4 or 5 guys on the top that any NAHL team would take. They might have 1 or 2 or 3, but it's not that deep to the point where every NAHL team is clamoring to get a Granite City guy. Otherwise, you'd see all those Granite City guys already. I don't even know. Maybe they are all tendered already. I didn't look at the tender sheet to see if they were, but I just don't see it.
Well, when you look at that team that won, there was probably like 8, maybe 9 guys that played half the year in the NA, and then came down and they went on their run. So, again, I still stand by my example.
Played in the NA or were rostered in the NA, big difference.
Dude, we went through all the predictions and went through the players on that roster. And you were like, "Oh my god, yeah, that is a big difference when you got guys that have got 30 games in the NA."
The 5 or 6 top guys, I fully agree with you with. But I said that top 5 or 6 guys, are good.
You're combative today. You're combative.
I don't see it. And just so you know, anytime I get this statement coming up, look at that right below your chin. When it says that, we know the audience is on my side. Junie speaks for the people. He's out there. He's every man in the junior hockey community. He is the voice of the people. And he may have actually polled people before he made that statement. He may have put a poll up on Twitter and got 1,000 people to agree with him before he put that statement up. So,
well, I appreciate that he asked the question and agreed with your answer.
Well, what else would he do? If he agreed with you, we might not ever have him put a comment up again.
I'm going to start asking questions that I already know the answers to of my own opinion. And then when the person matches it, I'm going to be like, yep, nailed it.
Well, what you don't know is, since I have the control of the board, you don't know how many people are actually agreeing with you that I don't put up and don't show you.
Well, what's funny is you very well could be Junie. You're just typing your own stuff.
That's why I'm over here not paying attention to you. I'm over here going, what? No,
exactly.
Jimmy is a real person. It does a great job. Hey, listen, we've got to go, folks. It's been fun, and I've enjoyed it tonight. Mike, great information tonight. Great, research into these teams. I hope you're wrong on most of your picks because that means I'm right. But if you are right, you deserve it, and congratulations in advance. But I'll be gloating very soon if it's not right.
Well, the most fun part of the whole thing is actually watching how it plays out. So everything starts. What's today? Wednesday in a couple days. So
Yep.
off we go.
Oh, very good. Everybody, have a great night. Thanks for tuning in, watching this. I hope this helps a little bit of understanding the NAHL and the NAHL playoffs. I hope it gave you some information to think about. Make sure you're watching those games. You got some excellent games coming up. Next Monday night, tune in to Junior Hockey Advisor, 9 o'clock at night. And then, of course, on Wednesday, we'll do this broadcast all over again. And we'll have a little insight of how things are going with the playoffs. And we'll also do our USHL breakdown as well. Mike, good night. Everybody else, good night. We'll see you all later.
Take care, everyone.